My ex-wife. Cheated with 20-something years old, guy when she was in her 40s. My ex-wife, in her 40s at the time, ended up having an affair with a guy in his 20s. They met on a flight home after she visited her parents. They sat next to each other, chatted, and exchanged numbers. It turned out that their parents were part of the same social circle, which gave them a connection. He was a fresh graduate from our hometown, heading to the city where we lived for an internship. I actually met him at the airport when I was picking her up. She introduced him as a nice young man and suggested we help him feel less lonely in the big city. So, we did. We started inviting him over for lunch or dinner on weekends, taking him along to the beach with our kids. Occasionally, my wife would go shopping with him or catch a movie that I wasn't interested in. A few times, she even took him to parties at her friends' places while I stayed home with the kids, genuinely grateful for the break from socializing with people I didn't care for. He seemed withdrawn and didn't talk much, but I didn't think anything of it. Little did I know, they were hooking up every chance they got. 6 months went by and his internship ended, so he returned to where he came from. I figured I'd never hear from him again. What I didn't know was that they stayed in touch. The young guy had caught feelings and was living under the illusion that somehow his time would come to be with my wife again. A few years passed, and we ended up divorcing, but not because of the cheating. If you've ever lived with a narcissist, then you'd understand why. At the time, I wasn't even aware she had been cheating. After the divorce, thanks to some friends, I found out just how extensive her infidelity was. She was a master manipulator, covering her tracks well while I, in my naivety, believed every word she said. The one rare mistake she made, if it was a mistake, was bragging to her girlfriends about the perks of having a lover 20 years younger. One of them spilled the beans, and that's how I learned the truth. After we divorced, the young guy intensified his pursuit of my ex, likely thinking his chance had come. When she must have rejected him, he got his revenge by sending me an email full of her nudes. No text, just photos. Some were taken in our bedroom, some in the living room, and others seemed to be from his place. There were posed nudes and some pretty explicit ones from his point of view. I didn't respond to that email, nor did I mention it to my ex-wife, with whom I stayed in contact because of the kids. That wasn't the only time she cheated, though. Those friends made sure I was well aware of her other escapades. Many of them had known about her hobby for years, but had kept quiet. By the time I found out, I was over her and didn't care much about her affairs anymore. What hurt more was the realization that I had believed I had a partner, a best friend for life, and was totally unaware of the reality. That feeling of humiliation stung the most. It made me angry, but more at myself than at her. I couldn't believe how naive I had been, how many obvious red flags and weak lies I had missed or ignored. For years, I worked day and night to provide the best I could for my stay-at-home wife and kids, only to be betrayed by the one person I trusted most. Anyway, that was a while ago. It took years to clean up the financial mess that divorce leaves behind. Experiences like that are impossible to forget or forgive, at least for me. I never really healed emotionally, but I've learned to live with it. The experience changed me, and to be honest, I like the person I've become more than who I was before. I'm a lot stronger now. The kids have grown up and turned out well. They've stayed close to me but have distanced themselves from their mother. I've remained single, unable to trust any woman again. Friends still keep me updated on my ex-wife's latest adventures, but they'll never know how much I don't care. I guess it must be satisfying for them to flaunt their successful and happy family lives. They helped me see who my real friends are. My ex continued with her ways, having one primary partner while sleeping around. Her partners probably knew and were okay with it. The young guy moved to another city for work, but I was told they still meet up whenever he's in town. Then I heard talk about her being part of threesomes and that she's bi. It turns out she's not just a narcissist, but a nympho too. The latest update, not from her but from one of her friends, is that she was diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder. Now on to the next story, story 2. My alcoholic wife cheated on me. During a business trip, my wife, 39F, and I, 43M, have been together for 11 years and married for 6. We have a toddler. 5 days ago, I discovered that my wife had been involved in a month-long emotional affair, EA, with a coworker. I also found out they spent time in her hotel room during a work trip 2 weeks ago, and that time together included a fair amount of kissing. I learned about this through a Facebook message from the coworker's mother-in-law, who sent me 15 screenshots of their Instagram conversations during that work trip. The messages included comments about their chair time together, along with loads of kissy face emojis and flirtatious banter. When I first read the Mael's message, I started shaking, my heart was racing, and I had tunnel vision. My wife was upstairs at the time, so when she came down, I immediately asked if anything had happened during the work trip that I should know about. This is when I encountered what I now know as trickle truth. At first, she denied anything had happened, but after about 10 minutes, she finally admitted that she got drunk at the hotel bar and ended up making out with him in her room. I asked her directly if she had slept with him or if anything sexual had occurred, and she emphatically said no. She told me there was no sexual touching, no hands under shirts, no exposed parts, no feeling up, no erections, just extended kissing while sitting in a chair. She's repeated this version of events multiple times. Apparently, it started at the doorway when he initiated, then they moved to the chair. At some point, she ended up getting sick and spent time on the floor, in the bathroom, and on the bed, while he lay on the other side of the king-size bed until 6:30 a.m. The next night, in a different town on the same work trip, he spent time in her room until about 10 p.m. There was a text message where he asked if she could use some company, and she replied with something like, "You can join," while she was watching TV. Some kissing happened that night too, but this time she was sober. My wife has struggled with alcohol for many years, but had been sober for nearly 6 years. Before this work trip, she and I had a discussion about her wanting to reintroduce alcohol into her life on a very limited basis, only during date nights or when we were away together. We also talked about her having a drink with her work peers during their quarterly trips. I strongly disagreed with the idea, as did most people in the R Alcoholism subreddit. But she went ahead and did it anyway. She lied to me about how much she drank that night and eventually admitted to having multiple drinks, including 2 shots at the hotel bar with her co-workers. So, after 6 years of sobriety, this was the first time she got drunk. And then this happened. As for the emotional affair, I found out that the flirting, banter, and whatever else had been going on since early October, or so she says. I asked my wife why she did what she did if, as she claims, our marriage is solid. And yeah, it is. We have a child together, we don't really argue about much, and we have a good home life. Our intimacy has waned since our child was born 2 years ago, but our bedroom life isn't dead. After some time to reflect on her actions, she told me it was the excitement, the newness, and the feeling of being desired, along with him just being a great work friend. After more in-depth discussions, she mentioned that it likely wouldn't have ever gone sexual. I had asked multiple times how far this would have gone if I and the AP's spouse hadn't found out. She concluded that what she enjoyed was seeing him crawl out of his skin, as she put it. Basically, she got some pleasure from feeling desirable, wanted, which likely wouldn't have led to a sexual relationship. She repeatedly told me she doesn't have any romantic or intimate feelings for this guy, and that it just happened. She admitted it was selfish and wrong, and I told her that what hurt me the most was the betrayal and secrecy. I was already anxious and losing sleep when she went on her work trip because of her complicated relationship with alcohol, and little did I know, that was the least of my worries. "You just have to trust me, babe," was a text she sent me the morning after when I asked her about how much she drank the previous night. I never would have expected her to do this. Regarding the AP and his wife, I found out that this isn't the first time he's done this in his 7 years of marriage. His wife had a hunch that something might happen on this work trip, so she checked his Instagram chats on another device, actually watching the convos live as they happened. I've been in contact with her via text, and she's a very kind but hurt woman who will likely file for divorce. It's clear that her husband doesn't care about the pain he's caused her or the hurt he's allowed to inflict on others. As for me, I'm struggling with very conflicting emotions about her short-lived affair and what might come next. Since D-Day, I've felt extreme hurt, then anger, then forgiveness, and then anger again. Sometimes when I feel okay, I worry that I'm coming off as too much of a pushover, signaling to my wife that she could get away with this again. They'll be traveling again in January, and I don't know what to do about that. This incident has sparked some deep and open discussions with my wife about desire, intimacy, and what we both want. It started with me trying to understand what she was seeking, or what she felt was missing from her life, and if there was anything we could do together to bring some excitement or a sense of newness into our marriage without secrecy and betrayal. We aren't explicitly talking about opening the marriage, but she has mentioned that she'd be fine and would even encourage me to have someone at work to banter with and possibly kiss. I don't know. It feels weird to me right now. Is this her way of giving me a pass? Or is she hinting at wanting an open marriage but not ready to admit it to me or herself? Divorce isn't on the table right now, and I know an open marriage, with boundaries of some sort, isn't the best solution for something like this. And I realize that shouldn't even be considered unless the marriage is truly solid.